Your Honor, with all due respect, this is complete bullshit. Robert Bobby Augustus crumpled the traffic citation and hurled it directly at Judge Lillian Morrison's bench, the paper bouncing off her gavel with a sharp crack. The entire courtroom fell silent. Deputies' hands moved toward their weapons. Bobby's tailored Italian suit couldn't hide the dangerous energy radiating from his 6-foot frame as he stood defiant before the most feared judge in Chicago's criminal court system. Judge Morrison didn't flinch. Her steel-gray eyes locked onto his with the precision of a sniper's scope. At 42, she'd sent more mobsters to prison than any judge in the district, and Bobby Augustus, head of the Augustus crime family, was about to become her next trophy. Mr. Augustus, her voice cut through the tension like a blade. You just added contempt of court to your charges. Sit down before I add assault. Bobby's jaw tightened. He'd built an empire worth $200 million through intimidation and violence, yet this blonde woman in black robes was treating him like a common street thug. His dark eyes blazed with fury and something else. Surprise. No one spoke to him this way, not anymore. Hey, before we continue with Bobby's story, I want to ask you to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. This story gets intense, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Also, smash that like button if you're already hooked. It really helps me bring you more stories like this one. Now back to our dramatic courtroom showdown. You think you scare me, sweetheart? Bobby's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that made seasoned criminals break into cold sweats. I know exactly who you are, Lilly Morrison. I know what you had for breakfast, what route you take to work, and how many locks are on your apartment door. The judge's composure cracked for just a microsecond, enough for Bobby to notice. Good. She wasn't as untouchable as she pretended. Bailiff, Judge Morrison commanded, her voice steady again. Remove Mr. Augustus from my courtroom. We'll resume this hearing tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. As deputies approached, Bobby straightened his platinum watch, a gift from the mayor himself, and smiled coldly. See you tomorrow, Your Honor. Sweet dreams. But as he was escorted out, Bobby caught something in her expression that made his stomach twist unexpectedly. Fear, yes, but also recognition? Like she knew him beyond his reputation. Outside the courthouse, Bobby's Lieutenant Tony grabbed his arm. Boss, what the hell was that? You just threatened a federal judge. Bobby lit his cigarette with shaking hands. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure he was in control, and Judge Lillian Morrison was the reason why. 24 hours later, Bobby sat across from Judge Morrison in her chambers. No longer the cocky crime boss from yesterday. The traffic citation lay smoothed flat on her mahogany desk between them. Let me be crystal clear, Mr. Augustus, Lilly said, removing her glasses and fixing him with those penetrating grey eyes. This isn't about a speeding ticket anymore. This is about the Salvatore family murder last month. Bobby's blood ran cold. The Salvatores were their biggest rivals, and their elimination had been necessary for business. But how could she possibly know? I have video evidence, she continued, sliding a manila envelope across the desk. Security camera footage from the warehouse district. High definition. Time-stamped. Your face is unmistakable. He didn't touch the envelope, didn't need to. If she had what she claimed, his empire was finished. 25 to life. Minimum. Unless... What do you want? His voice was barely audible. Lilly leaned back in her leather chair, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I want Vincent Torino. The name hit Bobby like a physical blow. Vincent Torino, head of the East Side family, Bobby's oldest ally, and the man who'd been like a father to him since he was 16. The man who'd taught him everything about loyalty, honor, and survival in their world. You're asking me to sign his death warrant, Bobby said quietly. I'm asking you to choose between your freedom and his. She tapped her pen against the desk rhythmically. Vincent's operation makes yours look like a lemonade stand. Drugs, human trafficking, contract killings. He's the real monster here, Bobby. The way she said his name, soft, almost intimate, sent an unexpected shiver through him. When was the last time someone had spoken to him without fear or calculation? You have 48 hours, Lilly continued. Meet me at Gino's restaurant on Wells Street tomorrow night at 8. Come alone, and come with an answer. And if I refuse, then Monday morning I issue a warrant for your arrest, and every cop in Chicago starts hunting you like a rabid dog. Bobby stood slowly, his mind racing. Why Gino's? Why not just do this here? For the first time, Judge Morrison looked almost vulnerable. Because walls have ears in this building, and because— She hesitated, then seemed to steel herself. Because I want to understand who you really are before I destroy you. Their eyes met and held. Something electric passed between them, dangerous and completely unexpected. Bobby felt his carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. Until tomorrow night then, Your Honor. As he reached the door, her voice stopped him. Bobby? Wear something other than that funeral suit. We're not burying anyone yet. Gino's restaurant hummed with quiet conversation and clinking silverware. Bobby arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a corner booth with clear sight lines to all entrances. Old habits from a life where paranoia meant survival. When Lilly walked in, he barely recognized her. Gone was the severe black robe and tightly pinned hair. Instead, she wore a simple blue dress that hugged her curves and highlighted eyes the color of storm clouds. Her blonde hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders. She looked younger, softer, human. Judge Morrison. He stood as she approached. Tonight I'm just Lilly. She slid into the booth across from him, noting how his dark eyes tracked her every movement. You look different too. I've never seen you in jeans. Disappointed? He was surprised to find he genuinely cared about her answer. Pleasantly surprised. She signaled the waitress. White wine, please, and Bobby, it's just dinner, you can relax. But relaxation was impossible with her sitting 3 feet away, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something light and citrusy that made him think of summer mornings instead of courtrooms and threats. So, Lilly said once their drinks arrived, tell me about Robert Augustus before he became Bobby the crime boss. The question caught him off guard. People asked about his business, his connections, his money. No one asked about the boy he'd been before the world taught him to be dangerous. Why do you want to know? Because in 6 years on the bench, I've sentenced hundreds of criminals. Most are animals pretending to be men, but you— She studied his face intently. You're different. When you threatened me yesterday, you were angry, not cruel. There's a difference. Bobby took a long sip of his whiskey, buying time. My father died when I was 15. Construction accident. Left my mother with nothing but bills and grief. Vincent took me in, gave me purpose, showed me how to turn anger into power. And your mother? Died 2 years later. Broken heart, the doctors said. His voice grew quiet. Everything I've built since then has been about making sure no one I care about ever feels that powerless again. Lilly reached across the table, her fingers barely brushing his knuckles. The touch was electric, sending warmth shooting up his arm. Power built on fear isn't really power, Bobby. It's just elaborate loneliness. For a moment, the restaurant faded away. There was only her voice, her eyes, her hand almost touching his. For the first time in years, Bobby felt something crack open in his chest, something dangerous and vulnerable he'd thought was dead. Then reality crashed back. This woman could destroy everything he'd built. She was offering him an impossible choice between his freedom and his loyalty. But as she smiled at him across the candlelit table, Bobby realized his biggest problem wasn't the decision she was forcing him to make. His biggest problem was that he was falling for his enemy. This is insane. Bobby paced his penthouse office overlooking Lake Michigan, his phone pressed to his ear. She's FBI, CIA something, has to be. Tony lounged in the leather chair across from Bobby's desk, cleaning his nails with a switchblade. Boss, you're paranoid. She's just a judge with a hard-on for putting away mobsters. Judges don't meet criminals at restaurants, Tony. They don't ask about your childhood or touch your hand like— Bobby stopped himself, realizing how he sounded. Like what? Tony's eyebrows shot up. Boss, please tell me you're not getting feelings for this broad. Bobby spun around, his dark eyes flashing dangerously. Watch your mouth. The words hung in the air between them. Tony slowly put away his knife, recognizing the shift in Bobby's demeanor. In 20 years of working together, he'd never seen his boss defend a woman's honor, especially not a woman trying to destroy them. Jesus Christ, Tony whispered. You are. You're falling for her. Bobby collapsed into his chair, suddenly feeling every one of his 41 years. She knows things, Tony. About the Salvatore hit, about our operations. Someone's feeding her information from the inside. Or she's wearing a wire and trying to get you to confess. No, Bobby shook his head. Last night was different. When she talked about power and loneliness and it wasn't an act, she meant it. Tony stood up, his face serious. Bobby, listen to me. Even if she's on the level, even if this thing between you is real, she's still asking you to betray Vincent, the man who raised you, your family. The word family hit Bobby like a slap. Vincent had saved his life, given him purpose, treated him like a son. Betraying him would be unforgivable, but 30 years in prison would destroy everything Bobby had built, everyone who depended on him. His phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Thank you for dinner. Meet me at Millennium Park tomorrow at noon. Come alone. Bobby stared at the message, his pulse quickening. She could have summoned him back to her chambers, could have made this official and threatening. Instead, she was asking for another private meeting, another chance to be just Lilly and Bobby, not judge and criminal. What's it say? Tony asked. Bobby deleted the message. Nothing important, but I need you to run surveillance on Judge Morrison's apartment tonight. I want to know who's watching her. You think someone's targeting her? I think a federal judge who takes meetings with crime bosses should be careful. Bobby grabbed his coat. And I think I'm about to make the biggest mistake of my life. As he headed for the door, Tony called after him. Boss, what if she's playing you? What if this whole romance thing is just a setup to bring down our entire organization? Bobby paused in the doorway, his hand on the handle. Then I guess I'm about to find out if love really does make you stupid. But as he walked toward the elevator, one thought burned in his mind. Tomorrow at noon he'd have to choose between his heart and his honor, and for the first time in his adult life, Bobby Augustus had no idea what he was going to do. Millennium Park sparkled under the October sun, as Bobby spotted Lilly sitting alone on a bench near the Crown Fountain. She wore a simple brown leather jacket and jeans, looking more like a college professor than Chicago's most feared judge. You came, she said as he sat beside her, careful to maintain distance between them. Did you think I wouldn't? Honestly, I thought you might send one of your men to kill me. Her tone was light, almost teasing, but Bobby caught the underlying tension. The thought crossed my mind. He wasn't joking entirely. Instead, I had them watch your apartment last night. 3 different surveillance teams, Lilly. Who's hunting you? Her composure slipped for just a moment. How did you... Because I've been hunted my entire adult life. I recognize the signs. He turned to face her fully. FBI or something worse? Lilly was quiet for a long moment, watching children play in the fountain. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Vincent Torino's people. They know I'm building a case against him. Bobby's blood turned to ice. How long? 2 weeks, ever since I started subpoenaing his financial records. She finally met his eyes. They killed my court clerk last Tuesday, made it look like a mugging, but Sarah never carried cash. She was too smart, too careful. Jesus Christ, Lilly. Bobby fought the urge to reach for her hand. Why didn't you tell me this last night? Because I wasn't sure if you were working with him to eliminate me. The words hung between them like a loaded gun. For all I knew, our dinner was a setup to confirm I was a threat. Bobby felt something cold and violent unfurl in his chest. The idea that Vincent, his mentor, his father figure, might have sent him to charm information out of Lilly before ordering her death made him physically sick. I would never hurt you, he said quietly. I'd die before I let anyone hurt you. The intensity of his own words surprised him. When had this woman become someone he'd risk his life to protect? I know, she said simply. That's why I'm here instead of in protective custody. They sat in silence, watching the city move around them. Finally, Lilly spoke again. I need those files, Bobby. Vincent's been laundering money through your shipping company for 3 years. Transaction records, account numbers, everything. With your cooperation, I can bring him down cleanly. Without it, she shrugged, I'll probably be dead by Christmas. Bobby closed his eyes, feeling the weight of an impossible decision crushing down on him. Betray Vincent and destroy the only family he'd ever known. Refuse and watch the first woman he'd cared about in years get murdered. There's a third option, he said slowly, which is, I kill Vincent myself, tonight. Make it clean. Make it look like a rival family got to him. Bobby opened his eyes, meeting her shocked gaze. Problem solved. Bobby, no. Lilly's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. That makes you a murderer. Sweetheart, I've been a murderer for 23 years. His voice was gentle but matter-of-fact. One more won't change anything. It will change everything. Her grip tightened. Because this time, you'd be doing it for love, and that changes a man forever. The word love hung in the air between them like a confession neither was ready to make. But Bobby felt it settling into his chest, warm and terrifying and completely undeniable. He was in love with Judge Lillian Morrison, and she was right. That changed everything. The Torino family compound sat like a fortress on 30 acres outside the city, surrounded by high walls and armed guards. Bobby had been here 1,000 times, but tonight felt different. Tonight he was planning treason. "Vincent's expecting you in the study," Maria, Vincent's longtime housekeeper, whispered as she led Bobby through the marble-floored foyer. "He's been drinking since noon. Something's got him spooked." Bobby's pulse quickened. If Vincent suspected Bobby's connection to Judge Morrison, this meeting could end with Bobby in a shallow grave, instead of Vincent. The study door was solid oak, imported from Italy, like everything else in Vincent's world. Bobby knocked twice, their old signal from when he was a teenager learning the family business. "Come in, son." Vincent Torino looked every one of his 68 years tonight. Silver hair unkempt, expensive suit wrinkled, tired eyes that had seen too much violence. The man who'd once seemed invincible now looked fragile, almost broken. "You look like hell, Vincent." "Feel worse." Vincent poured himself another scotch, not offering Bobby one, a breach of his usual hospitality that set off every alarm bell in Bobby's head. "We need to talk about Judge Morrison." Bobby kept his expression neutral, falling back on years of training. "What about her? She's been asking questions, digging into our finances, our shipping operations, everything." Vincent moved to the window overlooking the garden where Bobby had learned to shoot, to fight, to survive. "I think it's time we sent her a message." "What kind of message?" "The permanent kind." Vincent's voice was cold, businesslike. "I want you to handle it personally. Make it look random. Mugging gone wrong. Car accident, whatever. But she dies this week." The words hit Bobby like physical blows. He'd known this moment was coming, but hearing Vincent casually order Lilly's death still felt like betrayal on a molecular level. "Why me?" Bobby managed to ask. "Because you're the only one I trust with something this delicate. And because—" Vincent turned from the window, his eyes studying Bobby's face intently. "Because I know you won't let emotions cloud your judgment." The irony was so sharp it nearly made Bobby laugh. Emotions were the only thing guiding his judgment now. Love, specifically. The kind of love that made rational men do irrational things. "Of course," Bobby said simply. "When do you want it done?" "Friday night. She's got some charity fundraiser at the Drake Hotel. Security will be light, lots of potential witnesses to make it look random." Vincent handed Bobby a manila envelope. "Photos, schedule, everything you need." Bobby took the envelope, his hand steady despite the hurricane raging in his chest. "Consider it done." "Good boy." Vincent clapped him on the shoulder with genuine affection. "You know I love you like a son, right? Everything I've built, everything I am, it's all going to be yours someday. After 30 years, you're still the only family I have left." The words were like knives. Vincent meant every syllable, and that somehow made everything worse. This wasn't a cold-blooded betrayal between enemies. This was a father figure asking his surrogate son to commit murder, and the son was planning to refuse, to choose a woman over family. "I love you too, Vincent." Bobby's voice was thick with emotion. "You saved my life, and you've made mine worth saving." Vincent smiled, the expression transforming his weathered features. "Now go. Get some sleep. Friday's going to be a long night." Bobby walked to the door on unsteady legs, the envelope feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. As his hand touched the handle, Vincent called out one more time. "Bobby, don't disappoint me. Family is everything in this world. Everything else is just business." Outside in his car, Bobby opened the envelope with shaking hands. Photos of Lilly at various locations, her schedule, floor plans of the Drake Hotel. Vincent had been planning this for days, maybe weeks. Bobby's phone buzzed with a text from Lilly. "Are you okay? You seem distant tonight." He stared at the message, then at the photos of the woman he was supposed to kill in 3 days. The woman he was falling in love with. The woman who represented everything good he'd thought was impossible in his world. Bobby typed back, "We need to talk. Can you meet me tomorrow?" Her response came immediately. "Always your place or mine." For the first time since he was 16 years old, Bobby Augustus was about to choose love over loyalty, and he had no idea if either of them would survive what came next. Bobby's penthouse felt different with Lilly in it. She moved through his space like she belonged there, examining his collection of first edition books, running her fingers along the grand piano he'd never learned to play. "You have good taste," she said, pausing at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. "Most criminals go for gaudy displays of wealth. This is elegant. Most criminals don't have degrees in art history." Bobby poured 2 glasses of wine, his hands surprisingly steady despite the bomb he was about to drop. "Yale, class of '02, full scholarship. Lilly turned, surprised. You went to Yale? Surprised? He handed her the wine, their fingers brushing briefly. Everyone assumes I'm just another street thug who got lucky. I ran your background check twice. There's no record of college anywhere. Because Robert Augustus never went to college, Roberto D'Angelo did. Bobby moved to the couch, gesturing for her to join him. I legally changed my name when I was 21. Fresh start, new identity. The old records are sealed. Roberto D'Angelo, she repeated slowly. Italian? My mother was Maria D'Angelo before she married my father. After he died, she always talked about going back to Italy, seeing the places her grandmother described. Bobby's voice grew soft. She never got the chance. Lilly settled beside him on the couch, close enough that he could smell her perfume again. What would you have been if your father hadn't died? If Vincent hadn't found you? A teacher, probably. Or maybe an architect. I used to love designing buildings that would last forever. He laughed bitterly. Instead, I became an expert at making problems disappear permanently. It's not too late, you know, to be someone else. Actually, it is. Bobby pulled the manila envelope from his jacket pocket, setting it on the coffee table between them. Vincent wants me to kill you. Friday night at the charity fundraiser. The words hit Lilly like ice water. Bobby watched her face go pale, watched her hands start to shake before she carefully set down her wineglass. I see. Her voice was admirably steady. And you're telling me this because I'm not going to do it. Bobby leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. Because somewhere between that courtroom and last night's dinner, I fell in love with you. And because I'd rather die than let anyone hurt you. Lilly stared at him for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what he'd just said. If you refuse Vincent's order, he'll have me killed. Probably slowly, probably painfully, definitely permanently. Bobby reached for her hand. Bobby, relieved when she didn't pull away. Which brings me to my proposal. I'm listening. Run away with me. Tonight. I have money in accounts Vincent doesn't know about. Passports he can't trace. We can disappear to somewhere he can't reach us. Bobby. Lily's voice was gentle but firm. I can't run from this. Vincent will just find another judge to intimidate or kill, and there are others like him, other families that need to be stopped. Then we do this smart. Bobby stood abruptly, began pacing again. I give you everything. Files, records, transaction details, testimony, enough to put away not just Vincent, but half the organized crime families in Chicago. In exchange for what? Witness protection, new identities, a chance to start over somewhere Vincent's reach can't extend. Lilly was quiet for a long time, staring at the envelope containing her death warrant. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. What about your people, your organization, the men who depend on you? Tony can handle things. He's smart, careful, knows how to keep everyone safe. Bobby knelt in front of her, taking both her hands in his. Lilly, I'm 41 years old. I've spent my entire adult life building something that will die with me anyway. But you, us, this could be forever. She looked into his eyes, seeing something she'd never expected to find in a man like Bobby Augustus. Hope. Real, desperate, beautiful hope. If I say yes, she whispered, there's no going back, for either of us. I've been dead inside for 20 years, Bobby said simply. You brought me back to life, that's worth any risk. Lilly leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. Then let's burn it all down together. When their lips met, it was with the passion of two people who knew they were crossing a line from which there was no return. It was dangerous and desperate and perfect. And somewhere across town, Vincent Torino was planning their murders. Those sacerdotes. The emergency meeting convened at midnight in the back room of Torino's restaurant, a place where business was discussed and bodies were disposed of with equal efficiency. Vincent sat at the head of the table, his usual calm replaced by something cold and dangerous. Gentlemen, he began, not bothering with pleasantries, we have a problem. Someone's been feeding information to Judge Morrison. Financial records, shipping schedules, operational details. Someone with access to our highest level of security. Bobby forced his expression to remain neutral as he scanned the faces around the table. 5 men he'd known and worked with for years, any of whom could be the leak Vincent was hunting, or none of them if Vincent suspected the truth. What kind of information? Tony asked, his voice carefully neutral. The kind that could put us all away for life. Vincent slid a folder across the table. She requested specific documents last week. Transaction records from our shipping company. Bank routing numbers for accounts she shouldn't even know exist. This isn't random investigation. This is targeted intelligence. Bobby's blood ran cold as he recognized some of the documents in the folder. Information he'd shared with Lilly during their conversations. Details she'd apparently acted on immediately. Either she was building her case faster than expected or... There's more, Vincent continued. My source in the FBI tells me Morrison's been meeting secretly with someone. Someone she trusts enough to meet outside official channels. Someone with intimate knowledge of our operations. The room fell silent. Bobby could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears, could feel sweat beginning to bead on his forehead despite the room's chill. Boss, said Marco, Vincent's nephew and his most trusted enforcer, you think it's one of us? I know it's one of us. Vincent's eyes swept the table, lingering for just a moment longer on Bobby than the others. The question is who's been stupid enough to betray family for whatever the feds promised them. Bobby met Vincent's stare steadily, calling on years of practice at hiding his thoughts. What's your plan? Simple. Tomorrow night at the fundraiser, we spring a trap. Morrison thinks she's safe at a public event, but she'll be isolated for a few minutes when she goes to the ladies' room around 9:30. That's when we take her. Take her? Tony's eyebrows shot up. Not kill her? First we make her tell us who her source is. Then we kill her. Vincent's smile was predatory. But not before we use her to send a message to anyone else thinking about cooperating with law enforcement. Bobby felt his world tilting dangerously. Not only was Lilly walking into a trap, but Vincent was planning to torture her first. The thought of her being hurt, terrified, broken, it made something violent and protective roar to life in Bobby's chest. I still think a quick hit would be cleaner, Bobby managed to say. Less risk, less exposure. Maybe. But I want to know who the rat is before I kill her. Vincent leaned back in his chair. Besides, after what happened to my nephew's wife last month, I think we owe the judge some special attention. Bobby's confusion must have shown on his face, because Vincent continued. You remember Sophia? Marco's wife? The one who got killed in that car accident? Of course, terrible tragedy. Wasn't an accident. Vincent's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. Brake lines were cut. Professional job. And guess whose signature was on the warrant that allowed police to search our warehouse the next day? Understanding crashed over Bobby like ice water. Judge Morrison. Judge Morrison, she's been waging a personal war against my family for months, killing my people, destroying my operations. Tomorrow night, that war ends. As the meeting broke up and the men dispersed into the night, Bobby lingered, his mind racing. Everything he thought he knew about Lilly was crashing down around him. Had she been playing him from the beginning? Using their connection to gather intelligence while simultaneously ordering hits on Vincent's family? But as he remembered the fear in her eyes when she talked about the surveillance teams, the genuine emotion when she touched his hand, Bobby realized it didn't matter. Even if she had manipulated him, even if their entire relationship was a lie designed to destroy his family, he was still in love with her. And tomorrow night, he was going to have to choose between saving her life and losing his own. His phone buzzed with a text from Lilly. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. Wear that black suit I like. Bobby stared at the message, his hands shaking. She had no idea she was walking into an execution, and he had less than 20 hours to figure out how to save them both. The game was about to end. The only question was, who would survive it? The Drake Hotel ballroom glittered with Chicago's elite. Politicians, socialites and philanthropists who made their fortunes in ways they preferred not to discuss at charity events. Bobby moved through the crowd in his black Armani suit, acutely aware of the 5 armed men positioned strategically around the room. Vincent's trap was elegantly simple. At exactly 9:30, Lilly would excuse herself from the head table to freshen up. The hotel's security cameras had been temporarily disabled on the second floor. Marco and 2 others would be waiting in the bathroom to subdue her quietly. By the time anyone noticed she was missing, Vincent's crew would have her somewhere private for their interrogation. Unless Bobby stopped it first. He spotted Lilly at the head table, stunning in a midnight blue evening gown that made her hair shine like platinum. She was laughing at something the mayor's wife had said, completely oblivious to the death sentence hanging over her head. Showtime, boss. Tony appeared at Bobby's elbow, his voice low. Vincent's upstairs getting into position. You sure about this? Bobby had told Tony everything an hour earlier. About Lilly, about the plan, about his intention to betray Vincent to save her. To his surprise, Tony had simply nodded. and asked what he needed to do. 23 years I've been with you, Tony had said. If you think she's worth dying for, that's good enough for me. Now, watching Lilly smile and gesture gracefully as she spoke, Bobby was more certain than ever. Whatever she had or hadn't done, whoever she really was, he loved her. And love, he'd learned, made cowards out of smart men and heroes out of stupid ones. I'm sure, Bobby said quietly. Remember, no one gets hurt unless they try to hurt her first. This is about extraction, not execution. Copy that. Rico and Sal are in position by the service elevator. Jimmy's watching the main exits. When you give the signal, we move. Bobby nodded, then began walking toward the head table. As he approached, Lilly looked up and her face lit up with genuine pleasure. If she was acting, she was the best he'd ever seen. Bobby, she stood gracefully, accepting his kiss on her cheek with the casual intimacy of established lovers. I was wondering when you'd come rescue me from all this small talk about hospital wings and scholarship funds. Having fun? He asked, though his eyes were scanning the room, tracking Vincent's men. The most fun a person can have while discussing tax-deductible donations, she replied with a slight smile. Though I have to admit, I keep thinking about our conversation last night, about starting over. Bobby's heart clenched. Lilly, we need to talk privately now. Something in his tone must have alarmed her because her smile faded slightly. What's wrong? Not here. Too many people watching. Bobby offered his arm. Dance with me? As they moved onto the dance floor, Bobby pulled her close enough to whisper in her ear. Vincent knows about us. He's planning to take you tonight here at the hotel, 9:30 when you go to the restroom. He felt her body go rigid in his arms, though she continued swaying to the music. How do you know? Because he asked me to kill you 3 days ago, and I said yes. Lilly pulled back slightly, studying his face. But you're warning me. I'm saving you. There's a difference. Bobby spun her slowly, using the movement to check the positions of Vincent's men. My car is in the valet stand. Silver Maserati, license plate Augustus. Tony has the keys. In 5 minutes, you're going to excuse yourself to make a phone call. Instead, you're going to walk straight out the front door and drive away. What about you? I'll handle Vincent. Bobby, no. Her grip on his shoulder tightened. If you stay, he'll kill you. If I run, he'll hunt us both forever. This ends tonight, one way or another. The song was winding down, their time running out. Around them, other couples continued their elegant dance, oblivious to the life-and-death drama playing out in their midst. There's something else, Lilly whispered urgently. Something you need to know about Vincent, about why I've been targeting him specifically. What? He killed my sister. The words hit Bobby like a physical blow. The dance floor seemed to tilt around him as pieces of a puzzle he hadn't even known existed suddenly clicked into place. Your sister? Sarah Morrison, my court clerk. The woman I told you was murdered last Tuesday. Lily's voice was steady, but Bobby could see tears gathering in her eyes. Vincent didn't just order a random killing to intimidate me. He murdered my baby sister because she accidentally saw something she shouldn't have. She was 26 years old, Bobby. She was going to be married next month. Bobby felt everything inside him go cold and still. All this time he'd thought Lilly was just another judge trying to make a name for herself by bringing down organized crime. Instead, she was a woman seeking justice for her sister's murder, a sister killed by the man Bobby called father. I'm sorry, he whispered. God, Lilly, I'm so sorry. He has to pay for what he did, not just to Sarah, but to all of them, all the innocent people he's destroyed over the years. The music stopped. Around them, couples began walking off the dance floor. Their moment was ending. Go, Bobby said quietly. Now, before it's too late. But as Lilly began to pull away, Vincent Torino appeared beside them, his smile warm and grandfatherly, his eyes like chips of black ice. Bobby, my boy, aren't you going to introduce me to your lovely friend? The trap was closing. Das ist Judge Lillian Morrison. Vincent extended his hand with old-world courtesy, though Bobby caught the slight emphasis on her title. What an unexpected pleasure to meet you at such a lovely event. Lilly accepted his handshake with perfect composure, but Bobby felt the tension radiating from her body. Mr. Torino, isn't it? I believe we have some mutual business interests. Indeed we do. Vincent's smile never wavered. Bobby here has told me so much about you. Haven't you, son? The words were casual, conversational, but Bobby heard the threat underneath them. Vincent knew. Somehow, despite all their precautions, he'd figured out that Bobby was the leak. Actually, Vincent continued, I was just thinking how nice it would be if the three of us could have a private conversation, upstairs perhaps, away from all this noise and distraction. It wasn't a request. Bobby's hand moved instinctively toward the gun concealed beneath his jacket, but Vincent's next word stopped him cold. Of course, if you'd prefer to discuss things here, I'm sure the other guests would be fascinated to learn about Judge Morrison's creative approach to gathering evidence. Though I suspect the mayor might be less than pleased to discover his star fundraiser is actually an FBI informant. Lilly's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Vincent reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small device no bigger than a button. This is the transmitter my men found sewn into the lining of Bobby's jacket pocket. The same jacket he wore to our meeting 3 nights ago. High-end surveillance equipment. Military grade. The kind of thing only federal agents have access to. Bobby's blood turned to ice. The jacket Lilly had admired, had touched when she helped him put it on after their dinner. She'd planted a wire on him, had been recording his conversations with Vincent all along. Clever girl, Vincent continued, his voice conversational. Using romance to turn my own son against me. I have to admire the strategy, even if I'm disappointed by the execution. Bobby felt his world crashing down around him. Everything between them, the intimate dinners, the heated conversations, the passion that had made him willing to betray his family, all of it had been a lie. She was FBI, maybe CIA, definitely something more dangerous than just a judge with a personal vendetta. Bobby, Lilly's voice was soft, pleading. It's not what you think, isn't it? Vincent's laugh was genuinely amused. Agent Morrison, I have to say, you played your part beautifully. My boy here was ready to throw away everything for love. True love, he thought. How romantic. The word agent hit Bobby like a physical blow. Not Judge Morrison. Agent Morrison. Everything he'd believed about her, about them, about the connection he'd felt. All lies. How long? Bobby's voice was barely a whisper. How long have you been lying to me? Bobby, please just listen. How long? The words exploded out of him with such force that several nearby couples turned to stare. Vincent stepped smoothly between them. Gentlemen, ladies, please excuse us. Just a small family disagreement. Nothing that can't be resolved privately. As the crowd turned away, Vincent's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. Upstairs now, or I start shooting innocent bystanders and claim it was necessary to stop a federal operation. They had no choice. Bobby felt like he was walking through a nightmare as they made their way to the elevator, Vincent's hand resting casually on Lilly's arm in a gesture that looked friendly but was clearly restraint. In the elevator, surrounded by mirrors that reflected their images into infinity, Bobby caught Lilly's eye. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and he saw something that looked like genuine pain, real regret. But it was too late for regret, too late for truth, too late for anything except survival. You know what the funny thing is? Vincent said as the elevator climbed toward the private floor he'd reserved. I actually liked you, Agent Morrison. You reminded me of my own daughter, if I'd had one. Intelligent, strong, passionate about justice. In another life, another world, you might have been good for Bobby. The elevator doors opened onto a corridor lined with original artwork, leading to a private suite where Vincent conducted his most sensitive business. As they walked, Bobby's mind raced through possibilities, escape routes, ways to keep them both alive for the next 10 minutes. But this isn't another life, Vincent continued, producing a key card for the suite door. This is the real world, where family loyalty matters more than romantic fantasies, where betrayal has consequences. Inside the suite, Bobby saw Marco and 2 other men waiting, along with several items that suggested Vincent planned to make their interrogation both lengthy and unpleasant. Now then, Vincent said, settling into a comfortable chair like a king holding court. Let's discuss exactly what information Agent Morrison has gathered, who else knows about it, and how we're going to clean up this mess before it destroys everything we've built. Bobby looked at Lilly, really looked at her for the first time since learning the truth. Past the fear in her eyes, past the professional mask she wore, he saw something else, something that made his breath catch in his throat. Love. Real, genuine, terrified love. She hadn't been lying about that. Whatever else was fake, whatever role she'd been playing, her feelings for him were real. He could see it in the way she looked at him, in the way her hands shook as Vincent's men moved to restrain her. And in that moment, Bobby realized it didn't matter who she really was or why she'd approached him. It didn't matter that she'd used him. lied to him, betrayed everything he'd thought was sacred. He loved her, and she loved him, and sometimes love was enough to justify anything. "Vincent," Bobby said quietly, his decision made, "let her go." "I'm sorry, son, but that's not going to happen." "Then you're going to have to kill me too." Bobby pulled his gun in one smooth motion, pointing it directly at Vincent's chest. Around the room 4 other weapons immediately trained on him, but he didn't flinch. 30 years you've been like a father to me," Bobby continued, his voice steady. 30 years of loyalty, of family, of everything I thought mattered. But I love her, Vincent, and I'm not going to let you hurt her." Vincent's expression was almost sad. "Oh, Bobby, what have they done to you?" "They showed me there was something worth living for besides fear and power." Bobby glanced at Lilly one more time, memorizing her face. "When I give the word, drop to the floor and stay down." Then he smiled at the man who'd raised him. "I love you, Vincent. But this ends now." And Bobby Augustus, art history major turned crime boss turned lover, prepared to choose death over dishonor for the first time in his adult life. "Now!" Bobby shouted, diving sideways as he squeezed the trigger. The hotel suite exploded into chaos. Vincent's chair splintered as Bobby's shot went wide, the older man rolling for cover with surprising agility. Marco and his men opened fire simultaneously, muzzle flashes lighting up the elegantly appointed room like deadly fireworks. Lilly hit the floor behind an overturned coffee table, just as bullets shattered the windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. Glass rained down like deadly confetti as Bobby scrambled toward her position, returning fire and praying his backup plan was still in motion. "Tony!" he shouted into his earpiece. "Now would be good!" The suite's main door exploded inward as Tony and 3 of Bobby's most trusted men stormed in, automatic weapons blazing. The tactical advantage shifted instantly. Vincent's crew had been positioned for interrogation, not a firefight. "Bobby!" Lilly grabbed his arm as he slid behind their makeshift cover. "The briefcase, Vincent's briefcase. It's got everything. Financial records, operational details, enough to bring down 5 families." Bobby spotted the leather briefcase sitting on Vincent's abandoned chair, but reaching it meant crossing 20 feet of open ground under heavy fire. Around them, the room was being systematically destroyed as both sides fought for position. "Cover me!" Bobby shouted to Tony, then sprinted toward the briefcase. He made it halfway before Vincent appeared from behind an overturned desk, gun raised. For a split second, their eyes met. Father and son, mentor and student, family torn apart by love and loyalty. "I'm sorry," Vincent whispered, and pulled the trigger. The bullet caught Bobby in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into a marble side table. Pain exploded through his body, but he kept moving, rolling behind Vincent's chair, as more shots followed. "Bobby!" Lilly's scream cut through the gunfire. "I'm okay," he called back, though blood was soaking through his shirt at an alarming rate. His right arm was useless, but his left hand could still grab the briefcase handle. Vincent appeared around the edge of the chair, gun aimed at Bobby's head. "You were like a son to me," the older man said, his voice heavy with genuine grief. "Why did you throw it all away for her?" "Because she's worth it," Bobby replied simply. "Because love is worth it." For a moment, Vincent's resolve seemed to waver. Then his expression hardened again. "Love is a luxury we can't afford in this business, Bobby. You know that." "Maybe, but I'd rather die loving her than live without her." Vincent's finger tightened on the trigger. "Then die you will." The shot was deafeningly loud in the confined space, but it wasn't Vincent who fired. Tony's bullet caught Vincent's center mass, dropping him instantly. Around the room the gunfire began to fade as Vincent's men, seeing their leader down, started surrendering or fleeing. "Boss!" Tony rushed to Bobby's side. "How bad?" "I'll live," Bobby grimaced, clutching the briefcase against his chest with his good arm. "But we need to move. Police will be here any minute." Lilly appeared beside them, her evening gown torn and her hair disheveled, but her eyes blazing with determination. "There's a service elevator at the end of the hall. Leads directly to the parking garage." As Tony helped Bobby to his feet, Vincent stirred weakly on the carpet. Blood stained his expensive shirt, but his eyes were still sharp, still dangerous. "This isn't over," he wheezed. "My nephew, Marco, he'll hunt you, both, to the ends of the earth." Bobby looked down at the man who'd shaped his entire adult life, feeling grief and anger and love all tangled together in his chest. "Maybe, but tonight it's over between us." "Bobby," Vincent's voice was fading but urgent. "The briefcase. Don't give it to her. She's not who you think." "What do you mean?" Bobby leaned closer, but Vincent's eyes had already closed. His breathing shallow but steady. "Boss, we gotta go," Tony urged. "Sirens are getting closer." They made their escape through the service elevator, emerging into the parking garage just as the first police cars arrived at the hotel's main entrance. Bobby's Maserati waited where Tony had positioned it, engine running. "Can you drive?" Tony asked, eyeing Bobby's wounded shoulder. "I can manage." Bobby handed him the briefcase. "But I need you to take this. Get it to Agent Morrison's FBI contact. Everything Vincent said she'd need should be in there. What about you two?" Bobby looked at Lilly, still beautiful despite everything they'd been through tonight. "We're going to disappear for a while. New identities, new life. Somewhere Vincent's people can't find us. If that's what you want, boss." As Tony melted back into the shadows, Bobby and Lilly climbed into the Maserati. But as he started the engine, Vincent's dying words echoed in his mind. "She's not who you think." "Lilly," he said quietly, pulling out of the parking garage, "I need you to tell me the truth. All of it. Who are you, really?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the Chicago skyline they were leaving behind. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible over the engine noise. "My name is Agent Sarah Morrison, FBI. The woman Vincent killed. The court clerk. That was my twin sister, Lillian. I took her identity to get close to Vincent's organization, to get justice for her murder." Bobby felt the world shift around him again. "So Judge Morrison is dead?" "No, Lillian was never a judge. She was a paralegal, worked as a clerk to pay for law school. Vincent's men killed her thinking she was me, thinking she was the federal agent investigating his money laundering operation." The pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. Sarah had taken her dead sister's identity, used Bobby to get close to Vincent, manipulated his feelings to gather the evidence she needed for her case. Everything between them had been built on lies. "The whole time," Bobby said quietly, "you were using me." "Yes." Her honesty was like a knife to his chest. "At first. And then, Sarah," he couldn't think of her as Lilly anymore, turned to look at him, tears streaming down her face. "And then I fell in love with you. Really, truly, completely in love. And I realized I'd rather have one honest moment with you than a lifetime of lies." As they drove through the night toward an uncertain future, Bobby felt the weight of everything they'd lost and everything they might still have settling around them like a shroud. Love built on deception, trust shattered and rebuilt, family betrayed for the chance at something real. "Where do we go from here?" he asked. "I don't know," Sarah whispered, "but I know I want to find out. Together." And despite everything, despite the lies, the betrayal, the violence they'd left behind, Bobby found himself believing her, believing in them, believing that sometimes love really was worth any price, even if that price was everything you'd ever thought you were. 6 months later, 6 months. Bobby Augustus was officially dead. According to FBI records, he'd been killed in the shootout at the Drake Hotel, his body lost when Vincent Torino's men dumped it in Lake Michigan. The Chicago Tribune ran his obituary next to Vincent's, calling it "the end of an era in organized crime." Robert D'Angelo, his real name, legally restored, taught art history at a small college in Vermont. His students knew him as a quiet professor with an impressive knowledge of Italian Renaissance sculpture and an unexplained scar on his shoulder that he claimed came from a hiking accident. The transformation hadn't been easy. Federal witness protection had provided new identities and backgrounds, but learning to live as ordinary citizens after years in the shadows of power had tested them both. Bobby had nightmares about the shootout, woke up some mornings reaching for weapons that weren't there anymore. Sarah struggled with guilt over her sister's death, wondered if justice truly felt like justice when it came at such a personal cost. But they were alive, they were together, and slowly, carefully, they were building something real. "Professor D'Angelo?" A student's voice interrupted Bobby's thoughts as he organized his lecture notes. "Will you be discussing Michelangelo's influence on modern sculpture in today's class?" "Among other things, yes." Bobby smiled at the earnest young man who reminded him of himself at that age, hungry for knowledge, eager to understand how art reflected the human experience. Beauty created from violence, order emerging from chaos. It's one of the great themes in Renaissance work. As his students filed into the classroom, Bobby caught sight of Sarah through the window. She was crossing the quad in jeans and a sweater, looking more like a graduate student than the federal agent who'd brought down 3 crime families with the evidence from Vincent's briefcase. She taught criminal justice now, her real-world experience giving weight to academic theories about law enforcement and organized crime. They'd married quietly 3 months ago, a simple ceremony with Tony and his wife as witnesses. Tony had taken over Bobby's legitimate business interests, slowly converting them into completely legal enterprises. Marco Torino had indeed hunted them for a time, but federal agents armed with Vincent's files had rolled up his operation within weeks. The past was buried. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but hopeful. Today we're examining how artists respond to trauma, Bobby began his lecture, looking out at faces young enough to believe the world could be fundamentally good. How they transform violence into beauty, chaos into meaning, personal pain into universal truth. As he spoke about Caravaggio's use of light and shadow to depict moral complexity, about Bernini's ability to capture emotional intensity in cold marble, Bobby found himself thinking about the strange journey that had brought him here. From street orphan to crime boss to college professor, each transformation had cost him something essential, but had also revealed new possibilities for who he might become. After class, he found Sarah waiting by their car, grading papers with the focused intensity she brought to everything she cared about. "How were the art appreciation students today?" she asked without looking up. "Optimistic, idealistic, completely convinced they can change the world through interpretive analysis of dead Italian sculptors." Bobby slid into the passenger seat, letting her drive, a small concession to domestic normalcy that still felt foreign but increasingly comfortable. "And that bothers you?" "No, I envy them." Bobby watched the New England countryside roll past, all autumn colors and covered bridges, and the kind of peaceful beauty he'd never thought he deserved. They still believe in heroes and villains, right and wrong, happy endings. "Don't you?" The question hung between them as Sarah navigated the winding road toward their small house, overlooking a lake that reminded Bobby of Lake Michigan, but felt completely different. This water was clean, peaceful, untainted by the memory of bodies and secrets. "I believe in second chances," Bobby said finally. "I believe in love that survives its own lies. I believe in the possibility of becoming someone better than who you were. That's a kind of faith. It's the only kind I have left." That evening, as they prepared dinner together in their small kitchen, Sarah's phone rang with a number Bobby recognized, her former handler at the FBI. She'd officially resigned from the bureau, but they still called occasionally with questions about cases that had grown from Vincent's files. "Agent Morrison," she answered automatically, then caught herself. "I mean Sarah D'Angelo." Bobby couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he watched Sarah's expression grow serious, then troubled, then frightened. "When?" she asked quietly. "Are you sure?" A long pause, then, "Yes, I understand. Thank you for calling." She hung up, staring at the phone for a moment, before looking at Bobby with eyes that had suddenly aged years. "Vincent's awake," she said simply. "He's been in a coma for 6 months, but he woke up this morning, and the first thing he asked for was our location." The words hit Bobby like ice water. Vincent Torino, father figure, mentor, the man who'd shaped everything Bobby had been, was alive, and undoubtedly planning revenge. "How long do we have?" Bobby asked, his mind already shifting back into survival mode. "Maybe days, maybe hours. They don't know how much of his organization is still operational, or who might be loyal enough to help him find us." Bobby nodded, feeling the weight of their carefully constructed new life beginning to crumble. But as he looked at Sarah, brilliant, brave, damaged, beautiful Sarah, he realized he wasn't afraid. They'd survived lies and betrayal and violence and loss. They'd built love out of deception and hope out of despair. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. "Then we run again," he said simply. "New names, new place, new life, as many times as it takes." "Are you sure? We could contact the FBI, get protection, testify, and spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, waiting for the next Vincent to find us." Bobby took her hands in his, marveling at how soft they'd become without guns and handcuffs and constant danger. "I'd rather disappear with you than be safe without you." Sarah smiled then, the expression transforming her face with genuine joy despite their circumstances. "I love you, Robert D'Angelo. Whoever you really are, I love you too. Sarah Morrison D'Angelo, whoever we're going to become next." As they began planning their next disappearance, Bobby felt something he'd never experienced in his old life. Contentment. Not happiness exactly, but a deep satisfaction that came from knowing he was exactly where he belonged, with exactly the right person, no matter how impossible or dangerous their circumstances might be. Some love stories ended with sunset kisses and promises of forever. Others ended with midnight flights and new identities, and the kind of forever that had to be stolen one day at a time from a world that wanted to destroy it. Bobby had always preferred the second kind. They lasted longer, burned brighter, and meant more because they cost everything to maintain. As Sarah packed their essential documents and Bobby erased all traces of their life in Vermont, they both knew they were walking back into danger, back into a world where love was a liability and trust was a luxury they couldn't afford. But they were walking into it together. And sometimes Bobby thought, as he took one last look at the peaceful house by the lake, that really was enough to build a lifetime on. The future was uncertain, dangerous, probably short, but it was theirs. And after everything they'd sacrificed for each other, that felt like the best possible ending to their impossible love story.